fellow South Africans, I'm addressing you this evening on a matter of great national importance. The world is facing a medical emergency far graver than what we have experienced in over a century. The World Health Organization has declared the coronavirus outbreak as a global pandemic.
When the COVID-19 pandemic struck South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa announced a state of disaster on the 23rd of March, and everything changed for us. In just a few days, our entire country was under lockdown. We couldn't leave our homes for 35 days. Just essential services were operational. All public gatherings or large gatherings were banned, and so that had a massive impact for us.
And we had less than 1 week to prepare. So like many churches, we had to make some fast shifts. We made the pivot to a full-blown online Sunday experience quite quickly.
And we realized our vision hasn't changed. Our vision is to love God, to love people, and to make a difference. And that's always been far more than just Sundays for us. But now we're going to kind of figure out how to do this in a new way. And we realized we had 4 empty buildings. We had a staff who were raring to go, but they were stuck at home. And we had a city that was in crisis. And we've often asked ourselves the question, if the doors of our church were to close, would the community, would the city even notice? And 2020 certainly put that question and our vision to the test.
Everybody had to be off the streets. You had to be at home. But of course, what's going to happen to the 2,000 homeless people in Durban? And non-profit organizations who've had a long-standing relationship with local government, including ourselves, formulated a plan almost overnight and processed the 2,000 people with dignity and care that one of the newspapers that weekend said that a little miracle just happened in Durban, that we were the fastest response and the most holistic response in the country.
I remember there was this guy who was waiting in the queue to be processed, and he was a heroin addict. And he was struggling so much because he had not had any drugs in few days. And he was shaking and he couldn't stand. And what he said next was just mind-blowing. He said, I believe that this lockdown, this 21 days, is God giving me a chance to get off the drugs. And that was powerful.
Thousands of people had no income, which meant they had no food. We had thousands of children that normally have their main meal at school. Schools were closed, they couldn't eat any longer. And so as this crisis amounted and potential starvation was on its way, we realized we had to do something. So we found some families, local families, who were packing food parcels, and we decided to partner with them. Once we had done that, it became very clear that they needed a bigger and a better place to pack food. Well, our church building, our Belito church building, was absolutely ideal for this. And so we moved the whole operation to there. And over 6 months, more than 15,000 food parcels were packed. This meant that more than 61,000 people had food for over a month. What was special for me was just to see people coming into the building that don't normally go to church, or certainly don't come to our church, day after day, to pack food, to distribute food, to bring donations, and just to form a community of generosity. And for me to come in and just to continue to see this building that normally would be getting swept and prepared for Sunday services with chairs and sound equipment and lighting, now was a packing station that fed thousands and thousands of people.
Early on in the pandemic, I got a message from another church nearby saying, please, could we help as Grace Counseling? One of their congregation members was the medical manager of staff at a nearby hospital, and she was taking serious emotional strain, as was her entire staff. And so I put a call out to psychologists across South Africa to see if they would be willing to help Grace Counseling meet the needs of nurses and doctors battling. And I was amazed at the response. We had over 170 psychologists respond, offering free counseling to healthcare workers. So overnight, we put together this database And we were able to respond to any healthcare worker feeling the stress and the strain of what was to come. Because at that stage, there was so much uncertainty.
We couldn't just kind of sit around and wait for this to be over. And so we actually deployed our entire staff, volunteer teams to actually make thousands of care calls. Whether someone came to our church or not, if we had their name and number, we phoned them and we said, how are you doing? And we cared for them as best we could. We simply could not allow anything to stop us from helping people to connect to one another and of course to God. And while we were kind of making plans to do this, God had an even grander vision.
The question that was wrestling in my head and heart was how do we care for the people?
For us, this wasn't about, keeping the wheels turning or the money coming in or our Sunday attendance. This was about having a vision big enough to make a difference in our city when the city needed us. When a local pathology lab approached us because they needed a place for COVID testing kind of urgently, a station, we didn't hesitate to say yes. Our building, we realized, was central, it was easy to find, and it was empty. And we knew we could help serve our city this way, in an incredibly important, vital way, by becoming a testing station. So that's exactly what we did.
Church isn't a building, church is the people. And loving the people, whoever they are and wherever they are, and whatever circumstance they find themselves, is what Christ followers are called to do, no matter what comes our way. Not even a global crisis can stop the love of God in action.
The world may have changed, but God certainly hasn't. At Grace Family Church, our grander vision is to join God's mission to heal the world. And no matter how the plans may change, our calling remains the same. Love God, love people, and make a difference.